Yes, welcome to Black Spaces. And this is Black Spaces Fan View. Now, in Black Spaces, we give you sci-fi and fantasy from Black SGL perspectives. Many other shows will critique blockbuster and indie sci-fi and fantasy films and TV series. But here at Black Spaces, we give you that unique critique about all things sci-fi. This is Todd, and joining me for the first inaugural grand premiere Universal beautifully I'm so you can see I'm excited. First fan view show. It's our first #1 majestic universal super sci-fi fan, Toya. Thank you, Toya, for joining me. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, well, great. Well, great. So, Toya, I really do appreciate you coming, being on board for doing this, but then also being active on our Black Spaces page, and I'll give a plug to that in a moment. But before I do that, let me just ask you a question as an intro to yourself, between you as a super fan and all the other super fans. Why do you love sci-fi? What is it about sci-fi, and I can say sci-fi and fantasy, that you find fascinating? What interests you about it?
I like the tweaking of the reality that we know. I think that what makes sci-fi successful and what intrigues me is that it takes what we know to be reality and jumps off into so many different directions. It's not anything that's too far-fetched. I think that is the universal, what could be, what if, or how about this? And it's just so many different avenues that the mind is allowed to imagine, that the things that we take for granted, things that we see as just being run-of-the-mill, can be so fantastic, can be different, yet still relatable.
Okay.
So I love the idea of that.
I agree, and I second your motion about that. That sci-fi just sort of Octavia Butler, who I know you are more than familiar with, just talked about the fact that there are really no boundaries. There are some boundaries in sci-fi, but you don't necessarily have to have boundaries in sci-fi. And particularly when you're talking about Black imaginations and Black futures, often Black authors, writers, screenplay folk are mixing and matching between the natural and the supernatural, between the speculative and the sci-fi. So there's a lot of ways in which Black imagination, but imagination overall and Black imagination in particular, can just go anywhere, not kind of bound by limitations. Yeah. All right. So I just want to tell the fans that in terms of the Black Spaces, all Black Spaces show, but particularly the Fan View show, you can catch us on our Facebook group page, the Black Spaces show, and we broadcast by Facebook Live. You can also catch us on our YouTube channel and our Spotify podcast. And you can get complete information on where to find information about our shows at our website, www.blackspacesshows.com. That's www.blackspacesshows.com. Please subscribe and hit and like us, or share and like us, because we love you. Now, today we're going to talk about one of Toya's fave shows, and that's what fan views are about. Is I'm interviewing the super fans about what they watch. And Toya has picked the intriguing series, The Watchmen. So if depending on where you are watching, various fans, feel free to post your comments, given whatever venue you're using. But you can also reach us on our email, which is blackspaces2001@gmail.com. That's blackspaces2001@gmail.com. Okay, so now, Toya, I know that this version of The Watchmen is at least the third version. First, you have the graphic novel, then you had the movie, and now you have this HBO series.
Right.
If you were going to kind of do the elevator version of the central premise of The Watchmen, what would you say if you had, that 30 or however many seconds to get to the whatever floor? What is it about the Watchmen that is, you say, is the sort of the basic premise of the show?
Well, I think with this show, it still takes the gem of the idea of the original comic and graphic novel, the movie, that Dr. Manhattan was this created superhero that was basically a nuclear deterrent. And because of Dr. Manhattan, we as the United States were able to win the Vietnam War, and it rewrites history in a different way. Like Nixon was elected to like multiple terms, but there's still in the original movie and the graphic novel, there was still that race between the Soviet Union and the United States. There was still that tension. But what makes the Watchmen series so different is that even with the idea that there's just so much fantastic stuff that happened, racism is still prevalent. I think what really drew me in was the fact that the movie or the series opens with the Tulsa riots.
Right.
And that in itself is horrific, but it's reality.
Right.
I mean, I think that we always talk about science fiction as being unbelievable events, but the fact that they opened up with such a poignant piece of history that is real. I mean, the fact that the show is basically about a nuclear bomb, as it was in a blue man's form, but we're opening up with the fact that U.S. citizens were bombed in the streets of their city.
That's right.
By fellow citizens.
That's right.
That's
right.
It is Watchmen basically takes the idea that no matter how we can imagine a reality, there's still the stigma and the just horrific nature of racism that permeates, but it's still intriguing. And so that's what got me in. That you can be a superhero, but you can also be racially discriminated against.
Yeah, and I find that one of the really intriguing things is that of what they did with the character or the superhero of Hooded Justice, right? So I'm not. Let me be clear that there's times in which I'm familiar with the source material, but I'm not as familiar with the Watchmen's source material, just based on what little research I've done. But as I understand it, the show takes a sort of interesting but very important or makes it, as you say, it kind of roots the story in race and racism, or the ongoing issues of race and racism and the war that race, racism, and white supremacy sort of wage on humanity, particularly Black or people of color. It roots it in that reality. And so the hooded justice figure is not just an individual with a hood with a noose around their neck, but is the story of Bill, right? If the character Bill or old Bill as he's known, the Louis Gossett character. So what did you find? Was that sort of a surprise when you were kind of walking through this series? I mean, what were some of those? Was that an interesting twist to you, or what do you think about that notion that the hooded, that is really sort of is also making this commentary as the original graphic novels on well, if you are doling out justice by way of being in by having a mask or a hood, or as is said in the very last episode, that how can you bring about justice if justice is completely blind? Or as the quote goes, you can't heal under a mask. You can't, your wounds have to need air. So I don't know, all of those, that's a lot, pardon me. but what do you think of that whole Bill storyline and that notion of hooded justice?
I liked it, and I think having seen the original movie, and it was funny because I went back and looked at the original movie, there is a scene in the movie where there is a skirmish or sexual assault. Skirmish is too light. It was a sexual assault.
Okay.
Between two other characters, and Hooded Justice, because we don't know who's behind the mask, Hooded Justice stepped in to interrupt this woman being sexually assaulted.
Okay.
And in this scenario, he was really seen as being a person to be looked up to, because you have these heroes, supposed to be heroes, and they're raping or being just drunkards or just being outlandish. And here's this character that's willing to say, no, this isn't right. And then when we see in the series why he was hooded justice.
Right.
And the irony is that he's hooded justice is because he was in the middle of being lynched by his fellow police officers.
Right.
And they had put a hood over his head and they had the noose around his neck. Somehow he managed to escape, but he still had the hood and the noose, but he interrupted the crime in progress, because even in the midst of being killed, he's still a police officer, the first Black police officer.
Yeah,
and so he still retained that. So for me, it was a little bit of a thrill, because so many times we as African Americans, we're the ones stepping up to do the right thing, and we don't get the recognition for it.
Right.
Or we end up being put in a position and to lead us to be injured or killed. And so the fact that we see the backstory of why hooded justice was hooded justice, and while he's able to walk into a store and everyone is not going to cower in fear because this is a hero, as opposed to if he walked in the store in his policeman's uniform with his regular Black face, everyone would have a problem.
Right.
I love the fact that the Watchmen series, it takes that idea of what we should fear and what we should celebrate and turns it on its ear, and then sort of skipping ahead the fact that we then have a life or situation where police are not able to show their faces because they had to be protected from the public.
Right.
Now, we go from hooded justice being hooded justice because he's a vigilante superhero to the cops that's supposed to be the quote good guys or good girls, as it would be, having to mask themselves in order to be efficient, because if they knew, if the neighbors knew who the police officers, then it would be a problem.
Right.
So I like that.
Right.
Law and order being the prevailing thing, it's still no order in the people, the person of color.
Yeah, and to me it's intriguing that for all of this discussion about the Cold War, about the nuclear war threat, about literally individuals having godlike powers to kind of avert the nuclear crisis, the crisis of racism and white supremacy are still at the heart of the downfall, or the prospective downfall of the United States. The what's the group? The Cyclops sort of syndicate, and the ways in which to the very end of the story, you have the threat that sort of white fragility, white privilege being wounded and feeling that there's a liberal state that is going to undermine them, is why they want to get these godlike powers from Mr. Manhattan and use it to reassume the world, the order of things, the racial order of things. Yeah. So that's fascinating. What do you think of Regina King's character? And as I have talked about how whenever I see Regina King do anything, even if I don't particularly love the role, I love Regina King as well. She's just a fabulous actor.
Right.
What do you think in terms of? What are your thoughts about her character in this series? Because she really is sort of the main protagonist. As I would say that there is no story without her story. So what are your thoughts about her and what she represents in this story?
I love the narrative that we, in a sense, we get to know her as Sister Knight.
Yeah.
Before we get to know her as Angela Athar.
Yes.
And she's a police officer who is just, kicks ass and takes no names. Yep. She has got either the time, no inclination to hear your backstory. She's on a mission. And then we get into it. We get into why she's Sister Knight. We get into the fact that she was born in what was the unified Vietnam, and that she saw her parents get killed. And the reason why she became a police officer is because she encountered a female police officer, a female or Vietnamese female police officer that basically said, we're going to get the person that did this. And even though that police officer didn't know how to look at justice,
right,
without the sake of law and order trial, it still empowered her. And I like the fact that we were able to see her be a mother to the two children that she took into her home.
right.
We were able to see her be a wife to her husband, which I love the backstory who her husband.
Yeah, that was quite a love story. Yeah.
And we got to see her be a police officer. We got to see her be a friend.
Right.
Her encounter with the persons in her community. I love the scene where she went to her adopted son's classroom and had to have the conversation with him when someone made a racist comment about her moon cakes.
Yes.
Like she got the Newman money.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The
Robert
Redford,
because Robert Redford is the president. He's giving out Redford money. So,
right.
As opposed to reparations, they're like, oh, that's the only reason a Black woman can have something because she got reparations. Like,
reparations. That's right.
I love the fact that she allowed the viewers so many different avenues. When she's out there, Sister Night kicking ass, we can identify with her.
Right.
When she's, meeting her to be husband, and she's having that, it was that scene where we didn't see him. We saw her, and we saw her just face travel the emotions as she realized who she's talking to.
Right.
And then we realized that, this is like a love story, and then we have the scene where they partner together to make the decision that she basically would have to keep his secret until it's time for it to be revealed in order to protect themselves as a couple and also protect him, and then she had to make that decision,
right,
to unleash Dr. Manhattan again.
Right.
How she struggled with that, because this is her husband, and this is something that she understands why, and I like the fact that even in this world, there's still the capacity for a Black woman to be sensitive and to marry the dichotomy that I can be law and order, but I can also be fair, I can be vengeful.
Right.
Because she does vengeful very well. She was very good.
That's right.
She can also be accommodating. She can also be sensitive. She can also feel pain, and I love that because, I was telling my partner, having seen the original movie where there was not a single Black face in that original movie. It was set in New York City.
Right.
I take that. There was one Black person in this whole movie who was like, in the original, he was like a psychiatrist at the prison.
Right.
One Black person.
That's right.
In the whole New York City.
Right.
In the 80s. No, that's not real.
No, hello.
And so I like the fact that even with this storyline, she was able to bring the viewers in and have her identify with her. So I'm like you. Anything she's in is just phenomenal. But I really like the fact that she went in a different direction.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, I think it was episode 6 where she literally is she takes this nostalgia pills, and she then begins to understand the pain that Bill, as her grandfather, endured, where his pain, I don't want to say that he handed her that pain down, but she understands now her connection to that story of Tulsa, of the Tulsa, of the Tulsa massacre, and in what ways, even though he moved away to Tulsa to New York City to become a police officer, that didn't heal it. That just took him to another a center of white supremacy, but very much in the police. And to me, it was kind of intriguing because I suspect that audiences watching this series in 2019 and then maybe folk watching in 2020, if you begin, you're like, okay, the police seem to be kind of good guys, at least initially, because the police are such good guys that they have to hide their faces from the white supremacists. But then you begin to unpack the story with Crawford, and you begin to say, "Oh, okay." And now Bill couldn't have killed Crawford. He's a man in a wheelchair. What I love is the story was so darn consistent that we haven't forgot that point back 7 episodes ago. We're going to tell you, we're going to tie that in. We're going to just keep remembering. And in fact, if you watch episode 1 and 9, you can see where 1 and 9 connect together. But they just this created a fairly consistent story in that regard. But again, to that point with regards to Regina, I really with Sister Night, the character's name was Abar. What was her first name?
Angela
Bar. They had a play on it. One episode was a God walks into a bar, but it was just Manhattan. But yeah, I like that. It's almost it's sort of a metaphorical reference to the legacy of understanding Black pain, right? And that she literally took on the pain of her grandfather, and understood. By the end, she still was probably a little upset with him, but she understood him more, right? And so, and that in some ways, it's sort of the ways in which African American women have been crucial to the narrative of us as a people anyway, right? Black women carry the story. which says things about there is no literature without and certainly no Black literature without Black women writers, right?
Right. Exactly.
So from your standpoint, Toya, what did they really get right, and what could they have done better? Is there anything that they could have, what do you like most? And then is there anything that you think they could have done better, or is that hard to think?
I think just realizing it was such a big bite. I think I was reading reviews from the fact that when you start out with the Tulsa Massacre, you have to show improved. You can't have stuff. When you have source material that has had such an avid following, but you're tweaking it in such a different way to tell a completely different story.
Right.
I think that was a heavy lift.
Okay.
I think that everyone did what they had to do. I really liked the fact that they explored full face on the narrative of intergenerational trauma.
Yes.
The fact that even though she didn't know the story of what happened, she still carried that in her body, because that's what happens. Even if we don't know the story, we still have it, we carry it around with her. I think they could have done more to really talk about the white co-signing of how the senator was able to get to that power position.
I see.
Without anyone checking him.
Senator King. Okay.
Right. I think that they could have did more. I mean, you can't have everything at one time. But I think that was something I would want to see more. I mean, I love the reckoning. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I love the way that they gathered them together at the very end.
Right.
And the fact that it came at the hands of a woman of color made it even better.
True. Yes.
I think that overall it was a very good show. I think that it was very respectful of the source material. I like the way it went into a different direction.
Okay.
I like the way that it ended, because it's that whole is she or isn't she? Even though the director said she is.
Yeah. We knew she walked across that water.
She is. She is. The fact that she's standing in front of the clock.
That's right.
She's cool.
She's right.
She is.
Right.
So I liked it. Kudos all around. I really enjoyed. I think it was really good. I love the high marks that they give to incorporating characters that were familiar to those that had seen the original movie and read the graphic novel. I love the way that they introduced new characters. Um, I love the interplay the characters have with each other. I'm a big fan of Ken Blake Nelson, so I like his character.
Yeah.
With the human lie detector, I like that. I like his backstory. You know, and I like the fact that he and Jenna work so well together. Even though you could tell the background, they came from such distinctive background, but they still have the ability to work together. So I like that component. I like the fact that even though Regina was the lead, we still were allowed to see her through the eyes of others and through her interaction with others. I like that because so many times women, particularly Black women, we don't get a chance to really be defined solely on our own. We always have to be defined by our interactions with other people. So I like the fact that we're allowed to see her not only by her own actions, but also her interactions with other characters. So I really like
it. It was interesting to me that they began to explore, Bill's desires as a gay man, or at least, that he had these desires in the context of this marriage. I guess so I had a conversation with Vince and Ulysses and Milton about sort of the portrayals of Black love. And I think that this show demonstrates that, in some ways there are godlike powers in Black love, in a metaphorical sense. But to me, I guess sometimes I struggle with the portrayals of Black LGBTQ folks, of Black gay men, of Black lesbian women, of non-binary folk. I mean, that I still think that, I think it was true to form in the sense that it was really it was just about homosexual desire. It wasn't about love. It wasn't, because it was proven that Captain Metropolis was just using him. He was just a prop. And so, but there's times in which I kind of wish it'd be intriguing to see a little bit more, even in the science fiction context, of portrayals that are powerful in the sense of same gender loving. And so, and I'm not saying that they're not there, it's just they don't readily come to mind all the time. So
that's true. That's true.
And so to me, I don't want to say it's a critique, because it wasn't really about love, it was just about desire. It was just about sex, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if that's a missed opportunity. It'd be nice if there was a second season, and there won't be. But if there's a second season to kind of explore that aspect, because other than that, I think they kind of just dropped that story of Bill's life.
They did.
It happened, it was there, but that was it. As opposed to, it'd been intriguing for Bill to talk about that at any other point in his life. And that's not that, not that doesn't happen. If folk have these desires and then they push them way in the closet, and that's right. But it'd be intriguing to explore that more. Okay. So Toya is our super fan of the Watchmen. We have a custom here on Black Spaces of asking for a rating. So let's say 10 is outstanding, brilliant, beautiful. 1 is don't waste your money. Between 1 and 10, 10 being on the high end, what do you give the Watchmen series?
I would give it a good solid 8.
8. Okay.
So I was very impressed. I wasn't blown away. I didn't fall out. I must tell you.
Okay.
I did I'm a clapper, so I did clap a couple of times, and it just really hit hard. So I would give it a solid 8.
Solid 8. Okay, good. All right. Well, then, and I'm glad I'll concede to the fans out there that Toya got me to go back and do something I was intending to do anyway, because I'd watched the first two episodes, but see, Toya, I've got to be real. I'm not a huge violence fan,
Oh yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
mine is like, too much, too much. And after Crawford was hanging in that tree, I'm like, I think I need something lighter.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But then when I went back,
Understood.
when I went back, I'm like, no, okay, it's violence with a purpose. It's not just, gratuitous violence. So no, it's a fabulous show. Adrian was, I would just say as a passing comment, Adrian was quirky as hell.
Oh yeah. Been crazy. Yes.
Ooh. I mean, and that whole storyline with the clones and that,
Yeah. That was, I mean, because it built up and like, oh, this is what you're doing with your time? Like, really?
Really? Yeah. Oh my. Yeah, literally spelling out
yes.
people's bodies. Okay. Go back and watch the series if y'all haven't seen it to know what we're talking about. Okay, so Toya, we're at that point that you have provided the fans with your insights and your brilliance. So what can the fans do for you? What do you want to plug and let people know about? What's something you want to plug for we?
Well, I am a writer. I primarily write Southern fiction, but every so often I do a little double dabble into writing speculative fiction. And I was very honored to be part of a collective of Black from the Future, which is an anthology collection of Black speculative fiction by women of color who identify as same gender loving. It is published by BLF Press, which is a press of Black lesbians. And we have stories from myself. We have stories from Bill Gomez, who, goddess when it comes to vampire literature.
Yes.
We have stories about M. Shelley Connor, who had written Every Man, which is a book that came out, and also a couple of other short stories that deals with the spectacular when it comes to fiction. So I would say it's getting longer nights, colder weather, looking for something to curl up.
That's right.
Support Black women writers.
Out,
yes. This is on Amazon.com as well as BLF Press.
Okay, so Black from the Future. Y'all got to get y'all's copy, but don't get your copy before you get my copy, because the shippings are kind of off. So I don't want you to hit the like until I hit like. I want my copy first. Toya, we need to get you back in here just on that volume.
Yes. Yes.
All right. I'll share that, and then we will quit. That I wrote an article not long ago with two colleagues on comparing Octavia Butler and Earthseed, the Earthseed books, to the character of Ben Sisko on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Nice. And our discussion, we're calling it Octavia and Avery Brooks's Afrofuturist Prescience.
Yes.
I gotta let you check that out. You tell me what you think. And I'll check out what you got. What that wonderful volume that y'all have published. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Kudos, my sisters. All right. Okay. So thank you so very much, Toya, for kicking us off with this absolutely great inaugural edition of Fan View. I want to invite other fans. You can't be the inaugural because Toya came and just she set that bar very high now. But don't come half. I'm kidding. But she set a high bar, and so this has been just great. This absolutely great. And so, folks, I want to again thank you for joining us. Thank you, Toya, for joining us. Yeah. Again, you can catch Black Spaces on www.blackspacesshow.com, and you'll have all the links, including this link to the Fan Views now. But please subscribe. Please like and share and like us, because we love you. And we will catch you on the backhand side, in the Blackhand side, and in the future. Thank you much.